This is the KwinnPop Podcast. I'm Peter Dawson.
I'm James Bullock.
How you doing today, James?
Peter, I'm feeling rather soulful today.
Soulful, you say?
Oh, Lordy, yes.
Oh, lordy, indeed. Well, we are here to talk about video games, TV, and movies, and let's get started with video games. So, 2014 was a magical year for video games. There were many great titles that came out that year, including Middle Earth, Shadow of Mordor. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
wonderful game. Dragon Age
Very much so.
Inquisition, very good game. But one game in
Shocked,
particular,
I'm shocked you didn't say Infamous Second Son.
that's also there. I'm not going to deny that. I quite liked it. I think it
It's a
didn't.
very pretty game. It's a very pretty game.
Yeah, it's fun. And didn't Titanfall 1 come out that year?
I believe so.
Yeah. So it was a pretty interesting year. But the one I want to talk about is well, more specifically, the one whose sequel I want to talk about is in 2014 a bit of a surprise hit, the South Park: The Stick of Truth, a
Mm-hmm.
South Park RPG done by Ubisoft, a company known for games such as Assassin's Creed and Watch Dogs, just to name two. But yeah, they produced South Park: The Stick of Truth, which was a South Park sort of parody of just fantasy RPGs, probably most notably Skyrim, especially because he had the ability to dragon shout, which is direct riff on Skyrim. And
Right.
now this year they have brought us South Park: The Fractured Butthole.
Mm-hmm.
Let me say that again: The Fractured Butthole.
Every time I hear it, I smile. I'm past the point of laughing now, though.
Yeah, I know it's well.
I think because I've said it so many times when I'm talking about the game, it's kind of like lost its oomph with that part, but I still smile every time.
hmm Well, what's kind of funny too is the original title for the game was going to be the Butthole of Time,
It makes absolute perfect sense now.
right? Yeah, especially.
I, I don't want to spoil anything about the game, but there's a big sequence when it comes to time, so it makes sense.
Well, isn't that kind
I
of in
mean,
the intro? Like,
no, it's something a little bit later. It's an ability a
oh,
little bit later
okay. I'm
that
thinking.
you can get
I'm thinking about the intro
that
of the
really
game.
ties into that.
Okay. Yeah, like I haven't gotten too far in, but I just yeah, there's definitely some time elements, so that makes sense. But obviously, retailers would not place a product with the word butthole on their shelves, so they change
Right,
it to. I
the
guess it's more
fractured
subtle.
butthole.
Like I don't
If you're
even.
not if you're really not thinking about it, it probably isn't until you like say it over and over again. If you just like, hey, it's South Park the fractured butthole, but you're not thinking about what you're actually saying, it's probably gonna get away with it.
Well, it's like the South Park SNL sketch where Sean Connery he answers below and then he wagers me, so it's
Hmm.
below me. Then you say it faster and you're like, oh, I get it.
Oh, now I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those.
Oh, Matt and Trey, you dirty dogs, you.
So, do you want to explain how this game is different from the original?
Well, a couple of things. One, the gameplay is slightly different. It's still turn-based,
hmm
but it's more strategic and tactical, where you can move across the screen now, move across the battlefield, like say Final Fantasy Tactics. For a lot of people that have played more of I would say mainstream real strategy games.
Yeah. Well, there's
Um,
there's another example. Mega Man Battle Network.
good one,
Thank you.
definitely. One of those golden games that a lot of people do forget about in the Mega Man franchise.
Yeah.
Um, of course, now this time they're gone away from the medieval trappings. It's not about swords and axes and armor and everything else. It's more about superpowers because they're superheroes in this game. They're parodying a lot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in this,
Oh, so
to the
much.
point that when you're picking classes, they actually name drop. Like one of the classes you can be is a psychic, and Cartman says when describing the class, he says, "Oh, you're a psychic, just like Professor X." So I think Peter, you said you're a blaster,
Yeah.
and I think they name drop Cyclops for that one.
Oh, I think they did. You're right.
Yeah,
I
so
didn't
it's
even think about
really
that, but yeah, they did.
so it's really a take on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And if you watch, if you're watching this season of South Park, they did the fourth episode. It was pretty much a prelude to this,
Hmm.
and the whole point where they explain like the cinematic universe in terms of when the movies are going to happen, when the Netflix show is going to happen. It's all in this game.
Yeah,
So I really love that.
I was just gonna say
Um,
the name of the episode was franchise prequel,
right.
which should tell you right there.
What they were trying to tell you instead of like the other year when they were leading up to the Stick of Truth coming out, and it had been delayed so many times that they actually made a joke at themselves, like I'll believe it when I see it when it comes out.
Yeah,
They tried to do the prequel to that, and it was like, no, we can't even say it's a prequel because it's been delayed so many times. I highly doubt it's even ever coming out.
yeah. This one got delayed quite a bit too, didn't it?
Yeah, because it was supposed to come out early part of this year. Then they pushed it back a little bit later, and then it finally came out in October. So,
Yeah, I think it
but
was supposed.
thankfully, it's here. I'm
Yeah,
happy about it.
yeah. I'm trying to remember. I think it was supposed to be February.
Yeah, it was supposed to be early February, and then they pushed it a little bit, and it's supposed to be the springtime, and then they pushed it again. It's supposed to be early fall, and I mean it is still early fall essentially, but it was supposed to be in September, and then they pushed it till October, and now here we are with the fractured butthole.
Yep. Yeah, and it's definitely a different sequel kind of sequel because it builds on the mechanics from the original quite well. Like
Hmm.
there's still the what's the technical term for the pooping minigame?
Wow, it's just like a toilet game now.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
because
they don't even give it. I forgot what the exact name of it because the trophy associated with it. I forgot the exact name of it, but yeah, it's a pooping mini game now.
yeah, it's a full-on minigame. Before it was kind
Yeah,
of just
it
it
was
was a
just one
way.
of those things. It was one of those things. Hey, let's give them a laugh. You can poop in the toilet and take it and use it for an attack.
Yeah. So you could weaponize your own poop there,
Yeah,
which is hilarious. Sure, and I mean it's definitely South Park's brand of humor
and
because
and add that to the fact that if you did use it, it grossed out the enemy that got hit with it, so they would get damage tacked on as they threw up every time they thought about I got poop thrown on me.
yeah, well yeah, it's like a take on the poison status element in
Right.
your typical fantasy RPG.
And
You're
there's
fun.
still the status elements in this one too, which I'm greatly appreciative of because they still have the ability you can cut your opponent and make them bleed. You can bury your opponent and scar them for a little while longer. So I'm glad they didn't get rid of that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because the blaster, his starting powers are fire based.
Hmm.
So one of his initial things is he can set people on fire, and I mean that's been my main experience so far. And
For me, it's been mostly gross. It's,
yeah,
it's been mostly gross. I had to rely on a lot of fart attacks to really get me by.
that's the thing, and that really kind of encompasses the humor of the game pretty well because there's it's South Park, so there's absolutely toilet humor that's just pretty gross, but it's still done well. Like
Very much so.
there's more like it's very rare that you don't get a good solidly delivered, but of course the big thing in South Park is happy to show the visual, but the build up makes it not just the joke is the visual,
Right.
if that makes sense. If you understand what
Right.
I'm saying, the
And,
joke
and,
isn't
and
poop.
and one of the things I love about not only the Fraction But Whole, but also Stick of Truth was the fact that since this isn't a TV show, they're not limited to time constraints, so you can have a lot of funny conversations between characters that you wouldn't normally have on TV.
Yeah,
Like the moment early, I know you've probably seen this part early in the right before we turn the new kid who is the king after the end of the Stick of Truth,
small spoiler
and
there. I
now
mean, it's a 3-year-old game.
yeah, and now he's reduced back to just being the new kid again. So apparently nobody else has come into South Park as a kid since then, but the new kid still exists, and he's the main character that you create. And the thing about it, before you become a superhero, there's a little interaction. I think if you hit it's a Rubik's cube in a jar. Did you do that?
Oh yeah, I punched it a couple times.
Yeah, and then Cartman comes over there and tells you I can destroy the universe, and he cries out to his mom about it, and she just tells him to try to be you're supposed to be nice to your friends, so he gets upset about it. Like little things like that you see sometimes in the show, but
Hmm.
it's very rare.
Yeah,
Whereas in Stick of Truth and of course in the Fractured Butthole, it's pretty much commonplace where they have these little character interactions that you would not have thanks to TV time constraints.
absolutely. And just some of the character interaction in general with like some meta jokes and everything. like one of the big fight at the beginning of the game
Mhm.
when you're still in the fantasy setting before they do the full transition. You're fighting a cardboard dragon.
Right.
Small spoilers for the beginning of the game, but it's like it's a cool way to open it up. And then it gets interrupted when a car comes by because they're
Mhm.
fighting in the street.
And the funny thing about that, I thought that was one of those moments that was made specifically for that fight. And that's actually happened to me a couple of times, just randomly having battles during the game.
Yeah.
Like I'll have a fight on Main Street against sixth graders, and a car will come by and yell at us, telling us they need to go somewhere. This and the person that yells at it, I need to go somewhere. They don't even have a specific place of where they're going, but they're just upset that these kids are fighting in the street right now and blocking their way.
So do we want to talk about the thing they added for difficulty?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was hoping we would get to that. Definitely want to talk about that because I personally am taking the token experience.
Okay, so we should probably explain what that means. Just to be clear. Okay, so South Park, being that there's never been a kind of humor they haven't liked, so they decided to go there. I'm using air quotes. Obviously, this is an audio podcast, so you can't see me doing it, but I want to be clear I
Just
used air
imagine.
quotes.
You can imagine air quotes.
Just, yeah, just insert air quotes there. So they. I oh, man.
I love the fact I got the white guy doing this.
I know. The white Canadian, too. I just want to add that. So the difficulty level is controlled by your character's skin tone. The darker you are, the harder the game is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't affect combat, but it affects stuff like how much money you can find just randomly around town when
So,
looting stuff. And
like, if you knock on the trash can or a mailbox or something or anything really, you can find some kind of money. But if you are of darker complexion in the game, you will not get half as much if you are playing as a light person.
yeah, and apparently it also affects conversation. I haven't really noticed that yet.
The only thing I've noticed, which actually has nothing to do with race, was later on when you're assigning your gender and your sexual orientation.
Oh, right, you can pick to be transgender or something, can't you?
Yes, you can.
Right, and
And a group of rednecks will come out and condemn you for it. It doesn't matter what you pick; they will be upset about what you pick,
oh, they always condemn you no matter what.
no matter what you pick.
Huh?
I am a male cis, and they got mad at me about that.
Interesting.
Yes, it doesn't matter what you pick; they are bigots for it.
Well,
So, you can't even be mad because no matter what you pick, they hate it. So there you go.
yeah. There's some social commentary right there for I've heard it. But yeah, no, it's doing fairly well. It's got some pretty solid scores on Metacritic there. I think it's 80 something, which is
Yeah,
generally favorable. A lot of places are giving it pretty top marks, and it's definitely I'd call it a worthy successor to the original.
I definitely do. I'm. It's always one of those fears when you get a sequel, especially something that you unexpectedly liked as much as the first game,
Yeah.
because I know we both played older South Park games and all of them were terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, all like the closest was maybe the N64 version was decent, but even that was still pretty bad. But the Stick of Truth came out, great game, and it's just one of those things they set a real high benchmark. And I think right now, as far as I've gotten in the game, they've gotten to a point where I feel like, yeah, this is a worthy successor. I don't know how much it's going to affect in terms of like the ending and stuff because I don't know if you agree with me on that, but the Stick of Truth kind of tapered off a little bit coming toward the end when it comes to the story.
It went to a kind of a funny place, and then it got weird, and then I don't know.
Yeah. And they kind of wrote themselves into a corner and they really didn't know how to get out, so they just did something silly and wacky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully they learned their lesson from that one and improved on it. So far, to me, they're doing a really good job. And some of the stuff has come very early that I thought would be later on in the game in terms of interactions. Has been ridiculous. One more thing for just like pure hilarity. I know, of course, you had to see this part. When you have to get the code for Cartman's basement
Oh yes.
and the drawings. Wow.
Like I don't yeah. This is. We're not gonna say specifically what goes on there, but early on you have to go and figure out the passcode to enter Cartman's basement, and you have to find his journal. And I don't remember Cartman ever expressing the thoughts that you would see in this journal. So it's definitely out there, even for him.
Right.
And it just gives the most fascinating look into the character's psyche.
Like, this game actually explains Cartman a lot more than we ever expected it to.
I know, that's the thing. It's like you're really kind of pulling back the curtain on him a bit or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's oh, I haven't noticed yet. Did the soundtrack do anything like the first game did? Because the first game, just so people understand what we're talking about, they kind of did a parody of fantasy chanting songs, where it's like you'll hear like like a nice kind of flute sound, and then like someone will be chanting, and in one case it's like Cartman, and he goes, "Sir, douchebag." But he does it like in a fantasy way, which is hilarious.
Yes, it's awesome.
Because it's just like taking this very serious thing and just making it the most infantile but comedic. Did they do anything like that in this one? I just haven't noticed yet.
No, I haven't seen anything like that yet.
Yeah.
But we still got a ways to go, so.
There's still plenty of hilarious background conversations, which I kind of just want to show to people, even if they have like the not necessarily a fan of South Park stigma, because the conversations, some of the background ones just in general, are so funny. Just, like almost all the interactions with the new kid's parents and everything like that.
And that's another thing, like, at first they looked like they were the greatest couple in the world, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's going downhill very quickly for them.
And you can take photos using
Yeah, your phone. You got a cell phone in this, and you're on Coonstagram.
Thank you. I couldn't remember what the parody name was.
It's on Coonstagram.
Right, because everything is Coon something.
Right.
To clarify, it's because Cartman's character is named the Coon. Just so you understand why that's named what it is, in case you haven't played the game or aren't familiar with the Coon from South Park.
Or just seen the episodes when they do the superhero gimmick.
Yeah. But yeah,
it's never been a running gag for the last few years, and that's another thing. Like, I have no idea where they came up with the idea that Cartman would want to be a raccoon.
It's not so much that he wanted to be a raccoon. I think that they wanted to give Cartman something that's racially insensitive.
That's what I was thinking the entire time, like when it happened originally. But he's never given off, like, from a character perspective as the Coon. He hasn't given me any racial connotations. Like, I was expecting.
I know. It's just like it's like.
I know, just the whole idea of the Coon is, but I was expecting him to do some kind of racial stuff as the Coon.
No, but no, he never does that. It's just
they haven't gone that far, thankfully.
It's a more innocent.
You're right. It's Cartman.
Weird.
It's Cartman racism, really.
Yeah, it's like you would imagine Butters to be the one that does that, but no. Because Butters has to be Professor Chaos.
Right.
Yeah, well,
I don't want to spoil too much. I mean,
yeah, that's one.
There's some really interesting stuff early on in the game that I would hate to spoil for people, including an appearance of one of the best side characters that just so happens to be a stripper.
Yeah, so let's continue on our little adventure by talking about a lovely show that recently wrapped its third season.
Mm-hmm.
It happens to be probably one of the most popular comedies on television right now.
And for good reason.
Yeah, but like I do mean statistically, because initial first run viewers are actually kind of shaky, because this is on Adult Swim. It's almost all of his viewers tend to be in the 18 to 34 demographic, which means it usually gets close to, if doesn't actually technically win that demographic, right, which makes it one of the most if not the most popular comedy within people between the ages of 18 and 34. Yes. Like more popular than the Big Bang Theory, for example, which is one of the most popular comedies on TV.
Yes, all of us pretentious hipsters who think this show is smarter than it really is.
Well, it is and it isn't. So the show we're talking about is Rick and Morty, which is as we said, it's on Cartoon Network's adult programming block, Adult Swim. And yeah, it started technically on April 1st of this year, Like that's when
Hmm.
they aired the pilot for the first
Yeah,
time.
the
But
April Fool's joke that came out of nowhere, and I was shocked the next day when I found out about it.
yeah, yeah, like this, they aired the first episode on a loop, something like that. Or was it like
Mhm.
6 times?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they essentially put on a loop on April 1st. There is their April Fool's prank. They did the first episode of the season, and then the rest of the season started on July 30th, and it just wrapped up this past October 1st. And yeah, so it was a 10 episode season, which I think only the first season has been more than 10 episodes, right? That was
Yeah,
11.
well, this was supposed to be, I think, 13 episodes, but they had to downsize it because of time constraints. Like they wanted to, Adult Swim and Cartoon Network wanted to get it out quicker.
Yeah. Plus they've mentioned before that they have sometimes have problems writing, which
Right.
has led to some magical moments. Despite that, I mean, that's writing
You
problems is
you
how.
would know otherwise. You would not know unless they told you. That's one of those
Well,
situations.
yeah, the character Mr. Meeseeks was apparently invented just because at one point in the writers' room they got frustrated, and so one person just shouted that, and they're like, "Let's turn that into a thing."
Oh,
Like
that is awesome! I did not know that.
yeah, yeah.
That
So
is so awesome.
so the character Mr. Meeseeks, whose character is, "Hey, I'm Mr. Meeseeks. Look at
Species,
me."
look at me.
And I totally didn't deliver that anywhere near right, but I'm worried if I do, I'll blow out my audio. So, but yeah, that was the whole thing. And apparently that was just because, and it's suggested that a lot of interdimensional cable, one of the most popular episodes from the
Right.
first season, a lot of that was just Justin Roiland improvising and ad libbing, which is why
Yeah,
you got.
that has one of my favorite scenes in the entire series where they mock the Lucky Charms
Oh yeah,
and
and tricks too, don't they?
the tricks they yeah no do they I
It's
know
well,
they do.
it's more
No
explicitly Lucky Charms, but
right
there's also some trick stuff in there.
right
It's like all
but
kids cereals, more or less.
yeah, and it gets so dark. It gets so dark.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah,
kind of the
just
show in a
just
nutshell.
imagine a moment of your entire fate being shaken as you go downhill and die. Like just that moment happening.
That's it. Oh man, but yeah, so the yeah we got the third season there, and it was pretty good. I don't. Some people were kind of saying that some episodes were maybe not as strong as others. I don't really see it. I mean,
The only episode I felt was kind of weak was the Vindicators episode.
yeah, well, that was the one that was a parody of superheroes, and
Right.
it's part of the thing was they decided to like they have all the superheroes that are kind of being, like the team they have assembled, which is was it Supernova, Alan Rails, who has the
Yeah.
power of ghost trains, uh, I'm trying to remember Million Ants, who
Million
is
ants, yes, a million ants.
who's just 1 million ants.
Just a
Uh,
literal man of ants.
yeah.
Not a man, not an actual human being, but just a man of ants.
What was the name of the crocodile dude? The cyborg?
Oh man, it was something really. It was just like two words put together. I cannot remember for the life of me, but he didn't last long.
Yeah, well, yeah, he was like the second one to die, I think. Or
Yeah. Yeah.
sorry,
Like the best for me,
small
the best
spoiler
part.
there. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry for the spoiler, but like the best part of that whole episode, which to me is pretty much the whole story of Morty throughout the entire season, is him just getting sick and tired of Rick
Yeah, well, that's really
and
what it
not being able
is.
to get away from him. Like that is it.
It's just every time it's like Morty's like he thinks something great's happening, and then he just when he realizes Rick is being Rick,
Right.
he just gets the most blank faced, annoyed expression on his face, and he's just like, and he
Now
just
for oh no, but to you now, do you feel like this is the season that Rick felt the most human?
probably because we got to see him being a little bit more vulnerable. Like not just in like in Pickle Rick, he was a pickle, so he had to compensate for that, which is obviously
Right.
something hard to do when it's like, well, he's just a mouth and some eyes, and then he's a pickle.
Right.
So he's literally just got his tongue to work with.
Right.
I mean, so he was certainly helpless in that situation, and yeah, they built basically a whole episode around that, which was amazing. But we also saw at the in the Vindicators episode, which was the superhero spoof episode, he gets really drunk and he does do some drunken confession stuff, and he ends up being a little embarrassed about the experience because he kind of hates his drunk self to a degree.
Exactly.
But he's just a crippling alcoholic. What did they call it? Trailer park drunk?
Yeah, he's trailer park drunk. He's either blackout drunk or trailer park drunk.
Yeah, and I think at one point, what was the Maximilius Renegade Star Soldier says
Yeah.
it's like I'm cool drunk. You're like crazy trailer park drunk.
Yes.
I think that's the exact line. We personally do not have any problems with people living in trailer parks. We're just quoting the episode.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But
like in
don't
that one,
put down your Pabst Blue Ribbon and start typing in caps at us.
we also have no problem with Star Soldiers. We just find the name hilarious. How PC can we get?
Happy seeing we get. Wow. Show me what you got.
But oh joy. But where was it? Where was I going with? Oh yeah, vulnerabilities, Rick. Yeah, and then in was it Morty's Mind Blowers?
Oh man.
Which the premise of that was where Rick shows Morty memories that have been erased. We also see some that Rick wanted erased,
Right.
which, as you can imagine, would be ones that he finds embarrassing.
Yeah, it's amazing that just a quick little spoiler. I'm not going to spoil too much. I don't want to make people that haven't seen the season so far feel like I've ruined it.
Yeah.
But in terms of Morty's Mind Blowers, it's to further explain. Also, Rick's a super genius. He's the arguably, or at least self-proclaimed, smartest man in the entire multiverse.
Yep.
And Morty's completely stupid in his mind. He's like he stated Morty is so dumb that they would use him as a force field just to keep away smart people. But during this episode, we see that maybe Rick isn't as smart as he thinks he is.
Yeah.
So he literally has to rid himself of those moments, including saying granted for granted when you're saying you're taking something for granted.
Oh yeah. Take it for granted.
You take it for granted, and Morty makes fun of him. So you've been saying it all these years.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of everybody does that sometime. Like there was a one from an episode of the IT Crowd where the guy says damp squid instead of damp squib because he doesn't know what squibs are. Yeah, but just to cap this off, this season of Rick and Morty ended up putting a lot of pressure on McDonald's.
Wow. Yeah, because McDonald's was in a position where they were forced to give into the demands of a group of fans of Rick and Morty for a particular sauce based on a 1998 Disney film without ever using the phrase Rick and Morty or any of the animations while trying their best to replicate it. And that movie and that movement really from 1998 started what, Peter?
Started what?
Started what?
Sorry, now I'm lost. I'm not sure what you wanted me to segue into. Okay, the movie was Mulan, and it
started the Szechuan sauce movement.
Oh, the Szechuan sauce movement. Okay, that's what you wanted me to say. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Szechuan we got to keep that in. We honestly do.
I know. Because I knew we were going with that, but I didn't know what you wanted me to because the way you phrased that. Yeah. So okay. That's great.
Awesome.
No,
that is awesome.
No, this is better than me actually taking the ball. It's like you laid the volleyball up, and I just refused to spike it. I just let that ball hit the sand. So the Szechuan sauce, yeah, so the Szechuan sauce, as it's been described to me, is basically it's kind of a sweet and sour barbecue.
Right.
Like, because I mean,
which you can make on your own too. It's not that hard to make.
Yeah, there's many different tutorials online. Because I mean, Szechuan is basically just a style of cooking from southwestern China. Like I think the name it gets its name from a particular type of pepper or something. Because there's like because Szechuan isn't, or Sichuan, however it's pronounced, isn't that a province in China?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so it's it's not the most descriptive name, but yes, it's Szechuan sauce, which they put out for the movie in 1998. The episode of Rick and Morty, Rick, one of the smartest men in the multiverse, if not the smartest, is obsessed with this. for some reason, and it seems to be genuine because like he talks about it outside of a scene where he's trying to trick someone, and so as a result, he like rants about how it's gonna be like his character arc to
Yes,
find more Szechuan sauce.
if it takes him 9 seasons.
9 seasons, thank you. Yeah, and as a result, it's like he just goes crazy in a callback to the season 1 rant, which uh, it's it's funny. Although honestly, I thought the season 1 rant was better, but that's neither here nor there.
Right.
It's still kind of hilarious just to have this genius man ranting about this obscure sauce. That's like if let me think here. Neil deGrasse Tyson suddenly went on a 10-minute rant about how much he misses. I'm trying to think of a nice obscure food that doesn't exist anymore.
Man. You know what? I got one. The Italian chicken sandwich from Burger King.
There you go. Yeah. Or McDonald's pizza.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Because I don't think that exists anywhere anymore.
Oh my goodness, that is a good one.
Yeah, like if
Mega Man Battle and McDonald's pizza.
Or even more bizarre, McDonald's Cheerios.
Okay, now you've really gone over my head.
Oh no, it was just like back in the day. I don't think you can do this anymore, but you could go to McDonald's and you could just buy Cheerios.
Oh, okay. I was about to say.
So it's like it's not even like
did McDonald's get into breakfast? Did McDonald's get into the cereal world? I didn't know about it.
They kind of did. It was just like they would sell you a thing of Cheerios.
The actual Cheerios. Okay,
yeah, it was actual Cheerios. It wasn't like they did their own thing with it. It was just here's actual Cheerios.
I was about to say, wow. I didn't know McDonald's failed at that. Wow.
Yeah. There you go. But yeah, it's just like it's such a bizarre. And as a result, though, there was a big fan writing campaign and all this other stuff. What you'd expect, a lot of Facebook messages, I'm sure, plenty of Twitter DMs.
Lot of Reddit threads.
Oh yeah, what am I saying? Of course it would be on Reddit. There's probably a whole subreddit on it now.
Yes, a subreddit.
You want to look that up? We'll continue to explain this.
See if no. Like I said, I mean, pretty much explained it. Like people went crazy over.
I'm saying, see if there's a Szechuan sauce subreddit.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. So, and it's as a result that McDonald's started giving away, or selling. I can't remember what they did, but they gave away a few jugs of it.
They gave it away with every meal, pretty much. It wasn't
no, this was before that. At one point, they were giving away jugs of it, and then later on, this was how long ago was this? This was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was a couple weeks ago. Yep.
Yeah. It wasn't that long ago. As of
no, not recording. A bit, not at all. It's very fresh in a lot of people's minds.
Sometime in October of 2017, for people who aren't listening to this currently, or depending on when we upload this episode, but sometime in October of 2017, they were giving away Szechuan sauce with basically every meal, and they ran out very quickly.
Yeah.
To the point where packets of Szechuan sauce were selling on eBay for hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars.
I actually just typed in Szechuan sauce Reddit. And before I could finish typing in Reddit, they had an eBay auction for a pack for $169 right now.
There you go. And I'm pretty sure one sold for more than that.
Oh, yeah. I know a couple sold for $5,000.
Yeah, I think there was one guy who was going around McDonald's and he was just like offering people the chance to dip in his sauce.
Yeah, for $10. For $10.
Yep. And he was apparently below the curve. So he was technically being generous.
He really shortchanged himself on that one.
Yeah, well, how much money do you really need? It's freaking Szechuan sauce, man. But yeah, so
it's hard times out there. It's hard times out there right now.
It really goes to show just how popular the show has become, and it's
right.
And every episode was just fascinating because we opened with an epic conclusion to the storyline we got at the end of the second season. We got a Mad Max parody, which had one of my favorite jokes of the whole season, which was two of my favorite jokes, because there's one where he's like, "Hey, do you guys have a Thunderdome?" He's like, "You mean the Blood Dome?" It's like, save it for the semantics, Dome, E.B. White.
Right. And one guy, and the fact that somebody laughed, it just made it even more hilarious because like this guy gets it. He got it. Nobody else got it, but that guy got it.
Like the joke itself is great, and then like they acknowledge how funny the joke is, and I'm like, you know what? I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
The other one is Morty. Small spoiler for the episode. Morty gets injected with the DNA or something like that of a dead soldier or warrior.
Right.
And it gets injected to his arm, so his arm becomes this hulking arm.
One arm,
like
one arm, mind
just
you,
one
just
arm. Yep,
one.
it's one. It's one, only his left arm,
This is
and
big as his entire body, practically.
yeah, because it's super muscular, and he himself is well,
He's a puny teenager. That's all.
yeah. So but it ends up having like the memories of the person it belonged to. So he names his arm Armathy, which is already an amazing name for something. And then at one point he asks because he can talk to it, but the hand can't talk. So
Right.
he's like Armathy, is this over?
And Arthur shakes his head like
Yeah,
no.
like he does like some gestures, like make a fist if this isn't over. He makes a fist,
Yeah.
and then Morty just goes, "This isn't over."
And then I love the part where they were in the blood dome and he's telling the people to stop cheering, and Arthur's doing the Hulk Hogan ear pose and everything
Oh
else.
yeah. Oh, yeah, and then after that episode we got Pickle Rick, where Rick turns himself into a pickle.
Yeah.
Shenanigans ensue. We got Vindicators 3.
Like I said, to me the weakest episode of the season, but
it's still pretty funny though.
Still good.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing when you say the weakest episode of a season. And when it comes to Rick and Morty, even the weakest episode is still better than 90% of what's on television now.
Yep. And then we got episode 5, the Whirly Durly Conspiracy.
Oh, Cherry is such a dick.
Yeah. Which has one of the darkest jokes in television history.
Oh.
We shouldn't repeat that here, but...
No. Let's just say, if you feel sorry for bad parents, don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lazy bad parents. Don't feel sorry for them.
Yeah. Then we got Rest in Ricklaxation.
That's a mouthful. You want?
That's a hard Ricklaxation.
Yeah. Ricklaxation.
That's tough.
That's a hard one to say. I'm just reading it.
Yeah. I know. So
that was a toxic episode. Wow, there we go, right there.
Yeah, the toxins episode. Yeah, Rick and Morty get detoxed, and they accidentally detox more than they bargained for.
A minor spoiler, but Morty becomes awesome in this one.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like because of the detox, they become sociopaths, but not like scary sociopaths.
It's everything that holds Morty back from being the person that he could be is actually exactly what's keeping him from being it turned into the Wolf on Wall Street potentially. That's it.
He gets essentially purged of all emotions.
Right.
And in this case, most of his negative ones are gone, so it's mostly a positive experience, but it's not great.
No, not a bit. No.
It's like it's a more likable Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, it really is. And the worst part, like you say, he's very likable because, like, during the whole time, I'm still rooting for him. Like, I know he's being absolutely crazy, but I still feel because the big thing with him is the fact we've seen for 2.5 seasons at this point of a kid being really abused by everybody and not having his moment to shine, and he finally finds it, and come to find out he can't even keep that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, then we get the Rick Lantis mix-up.
My favorite episode of the season.
Yeah, definitely one of the best, and if not, my favorite as well. I have a hard time picking, but also known as Tales from the Citadel, which this is pretty high concept for the show. So let's just say it ends up being this amazing mashup of various movie spoofs and just stories in general that it weaves together this beautiful tale of this one very unusual location that is unique to the Rick and Morty universe, the aforementioned Citadel. Without getting too much
into directly what happened in the first episode of the season as to why this area has become what it is now.
Yeah, and it also gives you like just an insight into this place that's kind of been mentioned frequently since season 1. Like we saw it heavily.
Right, we've seen it, but never into this depth.
Yeah, it really shows just how crazy. I mean, I'm getting parodies of Stand By Me and Training Day, as well as like just political dramas in general.
Good stuff, really.
Oh, absolutely.
Stuff. Really good stuff.
We mentioned Morty's Mind Blowers. It was kind of a clip show, but it was clips you've never seen before, which I think is something Rick says in the episode.
Right. This was the interdimensional television episode that wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they even say in the episode.
Rick even says it. Rick even says it. He tells you ahead of time, and I actually liked it a lot more than the second interdimensional television.
Well, because the second one really wasn't that good.
It was okay.
Yeah, but it
had some moments. It was no ball fondlers, but it had its moments.
No, because like the second interdimensional cable, it just felt like it was gonna be more of a spoof of Adult Swim humor.
Yeah, yeah. The best part about it was really the Jerry subplot. Like that
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
yeah,
Which is a problem because normally the highlight is just all the weird clips and you just
yeah,
quote them
yeah.
all over again. It's like, I'm baby legs. I'm regular legs. Just even if you don't understand the context of that joke, that phrase
That's
is just
ridiculous. Just the thought of it is ridiculous.
just declaring yourself regular legs.
I'm a regular listen.
And yeah, and then we got the ABCs of Beth, which was a Beth.
Another awesome episode.
That was a pretty great one. It showed just it really examined the character of Beth, Morty's mom and Rick's daughter.
Right.
Yeah, and we it really genuinely gave it a chance to examine her and how much she's like her father and how different she is at the same
Because
time.
we've seen glimpses. We saw a lot of glimpses throughout the season of just how much she is like Rick.
Yeah.
Especially during the Pickle Rick episode. Like, her reaction to some criticism about herself and her life was so Rick. It was ridiculous.
Yep. And then we ended it with oh man, this one's gonna be fun. The Rick Churian Morty date.
Morty date.
Which was I don't even basically they're tired of being like the go-to guys for solving problems that are beneath their talents.
Yeah, yeah. In season 2, they introduced us to President Keith David. Yep. Like, that's the main thing, and he returns for that episode. And essentially, he treats them like Ghostbusters.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they actually say it's like we're not Ghostbusters.
We're not Ghostbusters. Like, that was, and it actually had in the opening sequence a shot by shot, almost reinterpretation of the scene from Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters movie, where Rick Moranis gets attacked.
Well, that wasn't Rick Moranis. It was a librarian. Oh, sorry, you're not talking about right. No, you're talking about the scene in Ghostbusters where Rick Moranis gets attacked, not the opening of the Ghostbusters.
Oh no,
movie.
no.
Yeah, sorry,
right.
Yeah, and I totally blanked on the I tried to be all pop culture smart, and instead I became a fool. All right, watch Rick and Morty if you haven't yet. Season 3 is really good. I wanted to wrap up by talking about it. Well, as of this recording, it's October of 2017, and earlier this year, in September, in fact, a movie came out, which I don't know how much anticipation there was. I think there was a bit of rolling their eyes and such because it's sort of
I thought it was really high. I thought it was really high.
I don't know. Maybe it's just me because I mean, so we're talking about Stephen King's It.
Yes.
Which is going to be really confusing because we're going to say it a lot in these conversations. Which I'm sure everyone who's talked about this movie has had the problem. Especially, it's like, have you seen it yet? It's like, if you don't put the emphasis on, it's like, huh? Have you seen it yet? What are we talking about? But yeah, so...
Well, I never actually thought about that, but that is so true. After you just said...
I'm saying.
After you just said it, like, have you seen it yet?
Yeah.
Okay, it what?
Yeah.
It.
What's important to note is this one was never made into a movie. It was made into a TV miniseries.
Yeah, that was the first way I saw it. Yeah.
Yep, me too.
Many years ago. Many years. It was one of those things. Did you like know about it in advance, or you just stumbled upon it like on a random Saturday afternoon while flipping through the television?
I'm trying to think. I think I sought it out because I think the first Stephen King I got exposed to was The Stand.
For me, it was Pet Sematary.
Okay, yeah, because I was watching the TV miniseries The Stand when that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we watched that as a family, which I was probably too young to watch, but whatever. And like everybody gets like one free pass.
Yeah. For me, it was a very obscure film. People probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but Rolling Vengeance was a big film for me as a kid because it was about a guy getting revenge on a bunch of rednecks who killed his mother and his sister by building a gigantic monster truck and running over them. Yeah, that was like the first R-rated movie I ever saw. And
why does Maximum Overdrive sound better than that movie? It really shouldn't, but it does.
Oh, it's so corny, man. I love it so much.
It's all good.
It's a late 80s movie, so you can pretty much imagine like a late 80s B movie, how corny it would be, but it worked.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh.
So, yeah, follows a group of kids. I can't remember how old
Now
they're.
in the 1980s,
Yeah,
because 80s nostalgia is all the rave.
yep. I guess they're young. Yeah, they're young teenagers. Like 12, 13, 14, something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess 12 wouldn't be a teenager, but
No. They're like about 14 or 15
yeah,
at
yeah,
the earliest. Yeah.
yeah. And what? Yeah, the nice thing was they went for I don't know why I stuttered there. They went for the.
You're
I think
thinking
it's because
about
I
it. You
literally
don't want
was
to say
reading.
it too many times and mess yourself off.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen. So they set the film in 1988, which is pretty clever because for those unfamiliar with the story of it follows characters in the present day also remembering an event from their past,
Hmm.
and of course the events of the past influence the present and so on. So that's a very key component to the story of it. And their way of addressing this was to set the movie in 1988 to focus on the kid storyline, and
Right.
then if they get a sequel, like assuming they would, but not if they didn't, whatever. And of
You
course,
still had a complete movie and a complete story, pretty
yeah,
much.
that's what I'm saying. And like it still spent about just over 2 hours on this because this
Yeah, it was. It's like 2 hours and about 10 minutes.
yeah, it's about 2 hours 10 minutes, and the miniseries itself was what 4 hours?
4 hours.
Yeah, so that's about right. And yeah, but it just entirely focused on the kids, with the presumption that because okay, they did officially make enough money to guarantee the sequel, so it
Right.
Chapter 2 will be coming in 2019, and
Right.
presumably that will follow the adults.
Right. Exactly. That's like the only way they could do it, honestly,
Mm.
if you're going to follow by the book.
Yeah, and the basic premise is just these kids in small town Maine, because Stephen King loves writing about small town Maine.
Right.
That's that everybody has a thing, and that's Stephen King's thing.
That's his thing.
He
Yeah, that's
loves
his
writing
thing.
about alcoholism in Maine
Yeah.
because he grew up in Portland, Maine,
Hmm.
which I'm assuming is smaller than Portland, Oregon, although I could be wrong about that. Let's have a Portland fight. You be Maine, I'll be Oregon. We'll see who
Okay.
wins. Yeah. But yeah, these kids in small town Maine, Derry, I believe is the
Yeah.
name.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
there. Yep.
yeah. They get stalked by Pennywise the clown. Sorry, Pennywise
The
the
dancing
dancing
clown.
clown.
The dancing clown,
Yep,
and he shows off his dancing skills as well.
he does indeed.
That was out of anything in the movie. That was the thing that made me laugh the most is when he showed off his dancing skills.
That was probably the most it reminded me of the 1990 miniseries
Yes, that's the only real time I felt like he was as close to that character.
because that's probably the okay. Just to say this out up front, this movie's really good. You
Very
should
much so.
you should absolutely go see it. But if there's one major critique I have, it's the character Pennywise, and even then, it's not bad. This could easily come down to preference. I don't want to say it. It's like, this is how they should have done it. This is how I would have preferred it. I mean, people are probably gonna disagree with this because this is very much a personal taste thing. But what I liked about the Tim Curry one, despite how goofy Tim Curry's performance was, it actually added menace when Tim
Yeah,
Curry was acting kind of goofy.
he
Because
was scary. It was scary that he was that funny. Like that was the thing. Like you knew something was off about it
yeah, and then he
the
turns out to be
entire
this
time.
scary monster thing, and it's
Right.
like, but he's just like going around. It's like, hey, it floats down here. And later on, he's like, do you have Prince Albert in a can? You better let him out.
Yeah,
Waha,
he
waha.
starts off, and that's one thing about the character in terms of and I think that's one of the things they had with the TV series. An advantage of was that they could kind of allow him to be, with Tim Curry being Pennywise, allow him to be a little bit more subdued and subtle,
Mhm.
and luring the kids into really trusting and even getting close to him.
Oh yeah. Meanwhile, the movie, like instead of going for a realistic one, he's undeniably a demon clown,
Right.
but that at the same time they do it in a way where that works.
Yeah, very much so. Like he's creepy the entire time, and the one thing about this one in comparison to the TV miniseries is the fact that there's no questioning outside of one very early scene in the movie, which pretty much introduces a lot of what happens and the gets the plots rolling. Is the fact that he is evil, and you should really be scared anytime he comes on screen.
Yep. Oh yeah, because he's just he's just the nightmare man haunting this town, and it's
Right.
pretty awful. I mean, so yeah, it follows a group of kids that have to deal with the demon clown haunting their town, and for some reason is specifically targeting children, like making them disappear and definitely killing them, and it's been going on for potentially centuries.
Right.
I think they do. I'm sorry. I know they do this in the miniseries. They do address in the movie though that he's been around for a long time, right?
When they started adding up the time, like
Yeah.
when they started seeing all the tragedies in the old newspapers,
Yeah.
they started putting two and two together. Like, okay, something's not right. This thing's been around for a while that he's been doing this, and nobody really recognizes it. And one of the things that I loved, and I don't know if you picked up on it, more than likely you did, was the fact that anytime we heard a television, it was Pennywise.
Yeah. Oh, that was great.
That was absolutely phenomenal.
And yeah, I just wanted to mention, like, going away from, because it's hard to describe horror, but there's a lot of subtle stuff on the film that works quite well. But it's also worth mentioning that the actors, they're legitimately, about 13, 14, whatever.
Right, they're legitimate kid actors.
Yeah, and they are definitely talented.
Very much so.
Jaden Lieber, who plays Bill Denborough, like, who's pretty much, he's the leader of the Losers Club, which is the name of the kids group. Yeah, he's legitimately 14 years old, and all these kids knock it out of the park.
Very much so. I have not a single complaint about any of the people that did. The only thing is funny because as actors and actresses, I had no complaints.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the writing I had complaints about.
Yeah, well, because it's hard, because Stephen King's works, despite how many adaptations of them there have been, tend to generally work better on the page.
Right. But I think, like, not only necessarily in terms of, like, writing, like, overall narrative or way the kids were presented, I was fine with that. It was just some of the things, like, I forgot what kid was it that was kind of, like, really, like, he was a trash talker. I can't remember exactly which one that was.
That was Richie?
Was it Richie?
I think it was Richie.
Okay, yeah. And, yeah, it's Richie. You're right. And, like, some of the snapbacks and the stuff that he would come back with just didn't feel like what a kid would say in the 1980s.
Yeah. That's the kid from
like really
Stranger Things.
2000-ish lingo. Like, it was really, those were only like little minor things. Like, I just couldn't see a kid coming up with that kind of stuff in the 80s. But if this was set in like late 90s, early 2000s, I was like, oh yeah, that sounds exactly right.
Yeah, I know that's the thing. It can be hard to do a period piece really nail the lingo. I mean, Stranger Things. I'm bringing this up because, like I said, the kid playing Richie is Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things.
Right.
Which obviously this movie really has a lot in common with, because it's also a group of kids dealing with weird supernatural phenomena. It's instead of weird psychic world, it's crazy clown man.
It's crazy clown that lives in the sewer.
Where everything floats, apparently.
Where everything floats.
Yeah, God bless them. They tried to make that line work.
Yes, they did. They really did. Honestly, I liked it because it was completely different from the original perception and depiction of what they were trying to go for.
Yeah, it's just hard.
And
because
it actually worked a little bit better.
Yeah, it absolutely worked better. It's hard to make the word float genuinely sound menacing. Really, ultimately though, it's everything in this film just works. One of the scariest films I've seen, not here, probably the last couple of years, and we have gotten a bit of a resurgence of horror films in the last few years as well, and like good horror films. So that is saying something.
Yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised how well it turned out, honestly.
Yeah, and it's like I said, the main things we had against it, I mean,
very nitpicky. Yeah, very nitpicky.
And like I said, the Pennywise thing, if you put the Tim Burton one, it's like more power to you. But I mean,
and more than likely, if you've never seen the made for TV series, then I think you will really enjoy the way they even presented Pennywise here.
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, if you don't have baggage of the 1990 thing in your mind,
right,
never seen that one, that'll probably help a lot. But yeah, ultimately, very good film. Definitely a good one to watch this Halloween if you haven't checked it out yet.
This is the perfect time to do it if you haven't checked it out.
Yeah, I think you're still playing it in a bunch of theaters.
Yeah, it's still going on right now. You can still go see it right now.
And as we mentioned, it did get a sequel because $35 million budget, which is shocking because it's a director who's from Italy.
I believe so.
Argentina, my bad.
Oh yeah, we're going all over the place here.
Yeah, we got an Argentinian director, and then we get. So I mean, this was one of his first North American movies. So of course they probably didn't have to pay him that much, and then you get a bunch of child actors, so they typically don't get paid that much.
They said they have the token experience.
Yeah, not getting that much money. Bringing it back to South Park. But this was set in Maine, not Colorado. But ultimately, the budget was $35 million, and they've made over $100 million. So definitely the hit the studios probably wanted.
Yeah, definitely. I don't see why it couldn't be, not only financially but critically. So
yeah, Warner Brothers.
looking forward to Chapter 2.
Yeah, Warner Brothers has definitely done better than the last time when they had Batman versus Superman and not Justice League, Suicide Squad, and both kind of they made money, but they kind of underperformed. So, and then we got Wonder Woman, which overperformed. Then we had It seemed to overperform. So yeah, they're making up for last year's issue.
Yeah, because that Batman versus Superman folded for a different reason.
Yeah. Float humor.
And we end on toilet humor.
Yep. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of the KwinnPop Podcast. Be sure to check out the website for more. And until next time, folks, have a good day.
Oh, Lordy. Oh, Lordy.